Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. Today we are diving into one of the most important systems in our body, that is the cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular system, also known as the circulatory system, which is responsible for the transporting blood, nutrients, oxygen, carbon dioxide and the hormones throughout the body. Which consists of the heart, blood vessels, that is arteries, veins and the capillaries and blood. Now let me know about the blood vessels. The cardiovascular system, which has the three types of the blood vessels, the arteries, veins and the capillaries. Arteries carry oxygenated blood away from the heart to the tissues of the body. The largest artery is the aorta. Then the capillaries. These are very microscopic vessels where the exchange of the oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients and the waste products occur between the blood and the tissues. Then the veins which return the deoxygenated blood back to the heart. The largest veins are the superior and the inferior vena cava. This image showing the structural and differences between the arteries, veins and the capillaries. And the artery, the outer layer, middle layer and the inner layer present. The outer layer is tunica externa, which provides structural support and the elasticity, and the middle layer, tunica media, that is the thickest layer that composed of the smooth muscle cells and the elastic fibers, and which allowing the artery to handle high pressure from the heart's pumping action. The inner layer is the tunica intima, a smooth inner lining that reduces the friction as blood flows through the vessel. Then the vein also consists the outer tunica externa, middle layer tunica media and the inner layer tunica intima. The outer layer, which similar to the arteries and provides the structural support, and the middle layer, which is thinner than the arteries and which containing fewer muscles and the elastic fibers, and in inner layer tunica intima, that contains walls that prevent the backflow of the blood. Then capillary. This is a single cell layer, that is the endothelium, and which is extremely thin walls that composed of a single layer of endothelial cells, which allowing the exchange of the nutrient, gases and waste between the blood and the tissues. Then we see about the valve. The valve which present in the veins to prevent the black flow of the blood and ensure it moves toward the heart. And then next to the arteriole. The arteriole is a very small branches of the arteries which leading into capillaries, which regulating the blood flow through vasoconstriction and the vasodilation. And the venule are the small veins that receive the blood from the capillaries and merge to form the larger veins. The arteries, the function of the arteries and the arterioles, which transport the blood away from the heart, and the largest artery is the aorta, and the structure is the middle layer of an artery wall, which is composed of a smooth muscle and which can constrict to regulate the blood flow and the blood pressure. Then arterioles, these small branches of the arteries and can constrict or dilate into change the blood pressure. Capillaries have the walls that are only one cell thick and which facilitates the exchange of gases and nutrients with tissue fluid. And the capillary beds are found throughout the body, but not all capillary beds are open simultaneously. The contraction of a sphincter muscle can close off a capillary bed, allowing blood to bypass it through an arteriovenous shunt. The veins function venules that collect blood from the capillaries and merge to form the veins which carry blood back to the heart. Veins have less smooth muscle and connective tissue compared to the arteries. And the walls. Veins often contain the walls to prevent the backward flow of the blood. Then veins carry about 70% of the body's blood and can act as a reservoir, especially during the hemorrhage. Heart. The heart is a vital muscular organ which is responsible for the pumping blood throughout the body and ensuring the delivery of oxygen and the nutrients to the tissues and the removal of the waste products. Its structure is complex and with several components working together to maintain the efficient blood circulation. The heart muscle forms the myocardium, with the tightly interconnected cells of the cardiac muscle tissue, and it is enveloped by a specialized membrane that known as a pericardium, which is the outer membrane sac with lubricating fluid. The heart has four chambers, two upper and thin-walled atria and the two lower thick-walled ventricles. The septum is a wall dividing the right and the left sides, and the atrioventricular walls that occur between the atria and the ventricles. The tricuspid valve on the right and the bicuspid valve on the left. So both valves are reinforced by chordae tendineae that attach to the muscular projections within the ventricles. Let me know about the passage of the blood flow in the heart. The blood returns to the heart from the body through these two large veins, that is superior and the inferior vena cava, that entering the right atrium. After that, the blood flows from the right atrium through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. This valve ensures one-way flow from the right atrium to the right ventricle. Then blood is pumped from the right ventricle through the pulmonary semilunar valve into the pulmonary trunk and the arteries. Then pulmonary semilunar valve prevents backflow of the blood into the right ventricle as it is pumped in the lungs. So then blood travels through these vessels into the lungs for the oxygenation. After that, the oxygen rich blood returns from the lungs into the left atrium through the pulmonary veins. Then blood flows from the left atrium through the bicuspid or the mitral valve into the left ventricle. Then this valve ensures one-way flow from the left atrium to the left ventricle. After that, blood is pumped from the left ventricle through the aortic semilunar valve into the aorta. This valve prevents the backflow of the blood into the left ventricle as it is pumped into the aorta. The largest artery in the body is aorta. The aorta distributes the oxygen-rich blood to the rest of the body. So this sequence ensures that deoxygenated blood is sent to the lungs for oxygenation, and then that oxygenated blood is distributed throughout the body to supply the tissues with oxygen and the nutrients. The pumping of the heart that sends out blood under pressure to the arteries. The blood pressure is the greatest in the aorta. The wall of the left ventricle is thicker than that of the right ventricle and pumps blood to the entire body. So the blood pressure then decreases as the cross-sectional area of the arteries and then arterioles, which increases. The heartbeat is the rhythmic contraction and the relaxation of the heart muscle that pumps the blood through the body, and this process is coordinated by the heart's electrical conduction system. So when the heart beats, the two atria contract together, then the two ventricles contract, so then the whole heart relaxes. So each heartbeat is called a cardiac cycle, and the systole is the contraction of the heart chambers and the diastole is their relaxation. So the heart sounds lubbed up due to the closing of the atrioventricular valves followed by the closing of the semilunar valves. The heart sounds the lub, which is the first heart sound that caused by the closure of the tricuspid and mitral valves at the beginning of ventricular systole. Then dub is the second heart sound that caused by the closure of the pulmonary and the aortic semilunar valves at the beginning of ventricular diastole. The electrical conduction of the system, the sinoatrial node or SCA node that located in the right atrium. The SCA node is known as the heart's natural pacemaker and which generates the electrical impulses that initiate each heartbeat. These impulses cause the atria to contract, that pushing the blood into the ventricles. The AV node, that is atrioventricular node, that located at the junction between the atria and the ventricles, which receives the electrical impulses from the SCA node and delays them slightly. So this delay ensures that the atria have time to fully contract before the ventricles begin to contract. Then the bundle of his and a pathway of fibers that carries the electrical impulses from the AV node down to the ventricles, which splits into the right and left bundle branches. And then Purkinje fibers. So these fibers spread throughout the ventricles, ensuring that the electrical impulse is distributed evenly. So then they cause the ventricles to contract, then pumping blood to the lungs and the rest of the body. So the number of heartbeats per minute is known as the heart rate. A typical resting heart rate for adults ranging from 60 to 100 beats per minute. The heart rate can be influenced by the factors such as physical activity, emotions, medications, and the overall health. The extrinsic control of the heart that refers to the regulation of the heart function by the external factors, primarily the autonomic nervous system and the various hormones. The autonomic nervous system plays a critical role with the sympathetic nervous system, which increasing the heart activity during stress or the exercise, and the parasympathetic nervous system slowing it down during the rest. And the hormones such as epinephrine and the thyroid hormones further modulate the heart function. The ECG or the electrocardiogram is a medical test that records the electrical activity of the heart over a period of time. This test is crucial for diagnosing and the monitoring the heart conditions. The ECG trace that consists of waves and the intervals that represent different phases of the heart's electrical cycle. P wave represents the atrial depolarization that triggers atrial contraction, and the QRS complex represents ventricular depolarization that triggers the ventricular contraction, and the T wave that represents the ventricular repolarization, the recovery phase of the ventricles. So this is the electrocardiogram cycle that P wave is atrial depolarization and PR interval, that is atria to ventricles conduction time, and the QRS complex is ventricular depolarization. Then the ST segment is ventricles in depolarized state, and the T wave is ventricular repolarization. The normal ECG, which regular pattern with the consistent intervals, and the abnormal ECG deviations in the waveforms of the intervals indicate potential heart issues. And this overview helps in the understanding the basic features and the significance of an ECG diagram. The cardiovascular system includes two circuits, the pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit. Both circuits are important to homeostasis. The pulmonary circuit, which circulation of the blood through the lungs, and the in systemic circuit, which circulate the blood to the rest of the body. The pulmonary circuit that begins with the pulmonary trunk from the right ventricle, which branches into two pulmonary arteries that take the oxygen poor blood to the lungs, and in the lungs the oxygen diffuses into the blood and the carbon dioxide diffuses out of the blood to be expelled by the lungs. Four pulmonary veins return oxygen rich blood to the left atrium. So the pulmonary circuit efficiently transports the deoxygenated blood to the lungs, where it is oxygenated and then returns to the heart to be pumped into the systemic circulation. The systemic circuit starts with the aorta that carrying a oxygen rich blood from the left ventricle. The aorta branches with an artery going to each specific organ. So generally an artery divides into arterioles and the capillaries, which then lead to the venules. So in systemic circuits in the heart that refer to the pathway through the which oxygenated blood is pumped out from the heart to the body, and the deoxygenated blood that returns to the heart. So this involves the left side of the heart, which receives the oxygen rich blood from the lungs and pumps it out of the body through the aorta. The blood then travels through the arteries, capillaries, and the veins, that delivering oxygen to the tissues and picking up carbon dioxide and the waste products before returning to the heart's right side through the superior and the inferior vena cava. As this is called a reverse of the pulmonary circuit. Now let me learn about the blood and how blood flows in arteries and the veins. So blood separates into two main parts, that is plasma and the formed elements. The plasma occurs 55% and formed elements 45% in the blood volume, and then plasma contains mostly water, that 90 to 92%, and the plasma proteins, that 7 to 8%, but it also contains the nutrients and the waste. Albumin is a large plasma protein that transports the bilirubin, and the globulins are the plasma proteins that transports lipoproteins. The beating of the heart is necessary to homeostasis. The homeostasis in the blood that refers to the balance and stability of the various physiological parameters within the bloodstream, because it creates a pressure that propels the blood in arteries and the arterioles. The arterioles lead to the capillaries where nutrient and the gases exchange with the tissue fluid takes place. Blood flow in the arteries is characterized by the movement of the oxygen rich blood away from the heart and towards the various tissues and the organs throughout the body. So the arteries have thick muscular walls that allow them to withstand the high pressure generated by the heart contractions. So the blood pressure due to the pumping of the heart accounts for the flow of blood in the arteries, and the systolic pressure is high when the heart expels the blood, and the diastolic pressure occurs when the heart ventricles are relaxing. So both pressure decreases and the distance from the left ventricle, because blood enters more and more arterioles and the arteries. Blood flow in capillaries is characterized by the exchange of the oxygen, nutrient and the waste products between the bloodstream and the surrounding tissues, and the blood moves slowly in the capillaries because there are more capillaries than the arterioles, and this allows time for substances to be exchanged between the blood and the tissues. So overall blood flow in the capillaries is crucial for maintaining the delivery of the oxygen and the nutrients to the tissues and removing the metabolic waste products. The blood flow in veins that involves the return of deoxygenated blood from the body's tissues back to the heart. That vein function to the carry blood at low pressure compared to the arteries. So as they are further away from the heart and are not directly propelled by its forceful contractions. The veins blood flow is dependent upon the skeletal muscle contraction and the presence of walls in veins and the respiratory movements. So compression of the veins causes blood to move forward past a valve, then that prevents it from the returning backward. The changes in thoracic and the abdominal pressure that occur with breathing and also assist in the return of the blood that cause the varicose veins that develop when the walls of the veins become weak, and the hemorrhoids or the piles are due to the varicose veins in the rectum, and phlebitis, which is an inflammation of a vein that can lead to a blood clot and possible death if the clot is dislodged and it is carried to a pulmonary. So thank you all. In the next video we learn about the cardiovascular disorders and their treatment. Please like, share and subscribe my channel for get more and more videos about the biology. Once again, thank you all.